Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street. We have an EnergyWeb video for you guys today, EWT on the exchange. A project that we find absolutely fascinating on the channel. This is orientating around blockchain integration within the energy sector. And it's something that we talked about multiple times in many different videos. We've covered a few different projects actually within this sort of sector. We've looked at Power Ledger. We've done quite a few AMAs with those guys in recent times. But EnergyWeb is one of those where they have a really good structure and platform in place to help enhance the ability of essentially not just the validation and processing of things like carbon credits and things like this. It can open up the opportunity for us to be prosumers via peer-to-peer trading of energy, that is. But also the transparency aspect. I think this is a big topic, something that people don't really think about or talk about enough at all in this world, where we're paying all these energy bills. They keep going up. Why is that? And what's actually going on in the background? We'll go into a few of those stats as we get some time throughout this video. But before we go into this one further, please don't forget to smash that subscribe button if you have not done so already. So welcome to the channel if you're new, and welcome back, of course, you've been with us for some time as per usual. Don't forget to check out the other videos on the channel as well. We'll also go into a bit of a chart analysis of EWT in a bit on our TradingView platform. But just a quick orientation around this. So some previous historic background of EWT's pricing has gone up to around sort of $20 in the past. We're currently fluctuating around 158, which is actually quite a good advancement. In the last month, we've had these really low regions of around $1, which I think has been an absolute beauty point of purchase power. We've seen that retaliation now of some higher demanding costs of up to 170, nearly $2 again. I'll go into a bit more detail about that as well, because actually from my perspective, I'm still, I think, relatively just slightly down on my EWT holdings personally, but I was buying at all sorts of different levels because I see the future of what EWT is. So going into a bit more about that, because I know some guys out there, you always like the price predictions. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I can certainly give an orientation around market trend, historic data of the charts, but more importantly, the actual market and industry that they're playing in. Like what variables outside of the actual crypto market can really influence some of these prices. I think it's really important to focus on all these different areas. And go and check out the intro videos that we've done on EWT in the past, but a very, very sort of quick overview, if you like, as I mentioned just a moment ago, is very much that orientation around multiple different solutions around things like, well, green proofs, by the way, we did a video on that in the past as well. This is where we look at things like the RECs, so renewable energy certifications and things like that, to essentially ensure that companies or suppliers of energy or the manufacturers of energy can have that transparency to us as end users. We don't really have that at the moment unless you do like really concrete research. You start calling, I mean, who's got time to call all these different companies up and ask for all their valuable information? It's very difficult. So if we can have that on blockchain and in a public domain and open domain, I think it'll be a lot easier. There's a lot of orientation as well now around Bitcoin mining. This has of course been a topic for many, many years around how much energy usage is obtained through that. So there's some really good solutions. It's a great platform, the WebX platform, which launched relatively recently. This is, in my opinion, I think this is going to absolutely transition the energy sector completely. Not just EnergyWeb, but there's other companies, as I said, Power Ledger, a few other ones. There's also a couple of companies like Algorand and Hedera that play slightly into this area, but these guys are really dedicated to this area. And I think when you've got an expertise in one area rather than like 20 different ones, it really puts you in a confident, strong position. Before we go into a bit more detail about some other stats, I just wanted to quickly mention a couple of other things that are problems in the world right now. Why is blockchain and AI in particular as well, that integration so much needed in terms of moving forward and making energy more available to everyone, more fairer, more cost efficient in both the supplying module and also us as end users paying our bills. Of course, we know that energy in general costs money no matter what. Even if you think that there's free energy out there, someone or something or a company has to provide it to you, and they're not going to do it for free, unfortunately. So when I had the argument with my energy company a while back where they said, well, you keep sending me posts and emails saying I've got renewable 100% energy, but my bills are going up. How can the wind and the sun cost so much money when it's just there in the world? And of course, the infrastructure costs and things like that, you have to kind of appreciate part of that, but they don't really kind of sell it in that way at the beginning stages. And you kind of just have to adapt your thought process a bit more balanced when you think about things like that. But what isn't transparent fully is things like brokerage of energy and how much energy is wasted because of things like leaks or poor infrastructure and things like this. And they don't pay for it, guys. We do. It comes through our bills. Like, there's no doubt in our... You can look at the sewage and the water companies these days. You scroll back 15, 20 years. I'm not saying it was perfect back then still, but at least you could see that they were doing some decent recycling of water and sewage. Now they just chuck it in the sea. I live in this, not in the sea, but I live on the sea, in Southsea here. I like to go for my lunchtime swimming dips, even if it's freezing cold. And you know what? Now half of our beach is closed for swimming. It's got warning signs on there saying poor water quality. Not because of the boats in and out. That's kind of changed a lot because we've got hybrid boats and some electric ones coming soon, which is really cool for the ferry. No, sewage dumping. Even the canoe lake around the corner, sewage dumping where the swans are. It stinks. And it's worldwide issue here. So what's going on, back to the point, rewind after the rant, is where is this cost going? Why are we paying these bills when they're not even doing the job properly? Other than flowing water into our houses, which has got God knows how many chemicals in it these days and probably killing us off anyway. It's madness. So there's hopefully a couple of things we can tick off with the use of blockchain and AI. There's a couple, I'll leave a link to this in the description. There's just a few other problems that we've got at the moment. Things like energy storage and management. This I find quite interesting. Technological innovation integration. This is where we're talking about blockchain and Internet of Things and AI. Now, we talked about IOTA recently, about Internet of Things. So there's things like smart meters as an example. AI can really drive in, guys, to allow us to develop more algorithmic data, real-time data of supply and demand, avoid potential blackouts, and also mediate cost. Where they just give us like standard rates of gas and electric, which are ridiculous, by the way, and have no proper meaning because more people are paying the same relative costs to other people who are using less energy or more energy, but they're paying the same thing. It makes no sense. We should be paying for what we use, similar to our roads and our road tax and all these kind of things. By the way, anyone out of the UK I'm not fully familiar with, but if you pay road tax or something similar, please let me know, because in the UK we pay road tax. And I've got potholes everywhere. I don't know what they do with the money. It goes somewhere else. Who knows? But yeah, some really interesting considerations as to what blockchain can... I mean, the blockchain side of it is about the verification, the processing, the validation of everything. The AI can be the driver of the actual data mechanism and ensuring there's more efficiency in the energy. And ultimately, both those things collectively can reduce cost and increase efficiency across the whole entire spectrum of the energy sector, including us as end users. And when we talk about things like the ability of Web3 hotspots linked to our batteries that we have for our solar panels, etc., on our roofs, we can become prosumers using a peer-to-peer trading method. Now, I believe up to round about now, or the conversation is still ongoing, of course, it was fairly illegal to do carbon credit trading. In fact, if I remember correctly, I need to do a bit more research on this. Around about 2010, maybe earlier or slightly later, there was a huge hoo-ha around the world about energy carbon trading. Not through blockchain, but the ability of people just manipulating markets and things like that in a non-legal way. Now they're speaking in government about this peer-to-peer mechanism in a more type of an act and a bill that will then pass into law for us to be able to do this in the future. But no doubt companies and governments will have their fair share of what we provide anyway, because at the moment you can, with your solar panels, pass on any excess into the national grid and eventually get paid back for that, but it's nowhere near how much you could get as if as a community, for example, we have a community battery, we could pass that energy across the other side of the world using carbon credits. Still needs a facilitation of the actual energy, but the payment of it in credit format could be taken care of. and it'd be a fairer system as well, because that's not me going, oh, you need energy over there, I'm going to charge you 3-4 times as much because I want to make profit. It's a fair, definitive system based on existing, exact, simultaneous, real-time data, AI, blockchain in the energy sector. Really interesting to think about these kind of concepts. Well, I say concepts, they're actually all in display. You can find a lot of articles way back 2013, even further back from there, about how we can decentralize, or what decentralization can really do for the energy sector. And this is way really before blockchain was fully understood. I mean, there was some mechanisms of it way back in the 80s, but this format is an understanding process, and then trialing and piloting. This doesn't happen overnight. It happens over potentially a 10 to 20 year infiltration period. And there's some really good articles out there as well, furthering what I've kind of mentioned briefly earlier. I mean, look at this. If you've got things like the World Economic Forum being discussed in certain articles relating to blockchain and energy, you kind of have to follow it really, because these guys are in charge of the world and our governments. So you do have to kind of follow those footsteps as to what is coming. And we'll relate that point very quickly in a moment's time to the chart, and why I've kind of thought about these price points in the near future, especially leading up to 2030 and 2040. We have COP29 recently across the world to look into that also, about how these developments of conversation and technological advancements and integrations of that, the speed up, the funding really pushes forward. The energy sector, by the way, guys, is not just wind and solar and what we do in our homes. Energy is everywhere. Now, EV cars, which were sold to people in a strange way, I still don't fully believe them. I'll always have combustion engine as long as possible, and I will rev that engine. Sorry, climate change, but some other things can be more considerable in climate, I think. But this conversation here, just on EV cars, market 40% increase to by 2030. I think I did some numbers here. So record numbers of commercial vehicles. This is just commercial vehicles, not just cars. There's over 625,000. These are heavy goods vehicles, and over 5 million vans. I believe this is in the UK. It's at least what I googled and asked for. So either way, you're going to see a big increase here over the next many years. That again facilitates a point that we'll make in a minute about the price points. But if you can think about this, where governments are now bringing in legislation where by X date they want everything manufactured in this way, and then on top of that, in say 15-20 years time, to say actually we're banning all these old cars, and we're going into the EV, we're going into hydrogen, wherever it might be. There's loads of facilitation that needs to occur with not just the charging ability, and in terms of making, again, back to the point of blackouts and things using AI blockchain, you've also got things like the recycling of batteries. The green proofing aspect really kicks in there, and the REX certifications really kick in there as well. This is the type of thing that EnergyWeb can provide as a service with full validation and full transparency, which is what everyone wants and needs, really. Again, making it a fairer system. Otherwise, all you're going to get is a continuation of what we've had with fuel or petrol and diesel for the last however many decades. Will be exactly the same with EV. We've already got conversations in the UK about EVs being taxed and road tax and this, that, and the other. People thought that wasn't going to be a thing. And I said many years ago, mark my words, in the future, they will grab you, because that statistical number gets bigger and bigger. And they go, oh, hang on a minute, we can monetize this. What do you think they're doing? So there's a change of power for sure in the industries of energy, but the technology and the infrastructure behind it is still very far behind. And it comes back to the educational point, really, in the back end of encouraging companies, businesses to understand AI and blockchain more, how it will facilitate them. And as soon as you say to them, they might not be interested in technology. Like when we look at our smartphones, I don't care how it works. I just want to know it works and it does things, right? But imagine you're talking to these, these fuel companies, these energy companies. You're saying, yeah, you need to go on blockchain and AI. Well, no, not really, because we're making like billions of profit every quarter. Why would we want to do that? Oh, but we can also save you a load of money, like potentially 20 to 50%. And they'll go, oh, well, yeah, okay, monetary value, let's do it. It's the only way you can win with some of these wealthy and greedy companies, right? So And it's the same principle really for us as end users. When you mention about savings, they're key words, right? Savings, 20%, 40% off. I'm not talking about piddly 1-2% off my bill. I can care less. If you can get me off 20%, I'm listening, guys. I'm listening. So you've got all these things about smart charging networks. You've got the vehicle to grid integrations. You've got the vehicles talking to each other. This is all blockchain related, guys, because of transactions aspects of transfer of actions, which we mentioned so many times on the channel. And you're relating this back to the energy sector itself in terms of peer-to-peer trading. You've got real-time data sharing. You've got the renewable energy certificates we talked about, the RECs, in other words, the reduction in the transaction costs. I mean, I don't know how exact this is, but I was doing a bit of research in the background of like costs and things, and just asking, well, okay, in the research I saw, it's saying like we could reduce 30 to 40% by using decentralized energy trading systems. Like, well, okay, you mentioned like 30-40%. I was doing a bit more detail about the breakdown of that. You couldn't quite get a full understanding of it. Someone might have more knowledge than I do in here. But for example, a traditional energy trading situation here, and again, please feel free to research yourselves. Broker fees, 1 to 5% of the transaction value. Settlement and clearing costs, $5 to $15 per transaction. Administrative and compliance costs, 10 to 20% of the overall operational costs of utilities. And then the transmission and distribution costs, 20 to 40% of the end user price, in brackets, not entirely transactional, but relevant to system inefficiencies. If you were to have a peer-to-peer energy transaction of, say, $1,000, broker fee would insinuate $10 to $50, administrative costs $100 to $200, and clearing and settlements of $5 to $15. So you've got you can probably have to listen to this several times. The total transaction cost of $115 to $265, 11.5% to 26.5% of the transaction value. What does the reduction mean? In traditional transaction costs, if they are $200, i.e. 20% of the $100, you can get a 30% reduction, which is 200 times 0.30 equals 60, which is a cost drop of $140, and 40% is $120 respectively. So a savings per transaction of $60 to $80 on a $1,000 transaction. So ultimately reducing the cost from 20% to 12 to 14% on the transaction. So if you can pass that on to the customer, whether it be $100 or $400 or $600, and you say you can have that as an annual saving, you'd be laughing compared to what we are doing right now. Again, those numbers are a bit all over the place. I'll probably just do a dedicated video to that, but I was just basically trying to make sense of what on earth they were going on about. But in conclusion, for every $1,000 transaction, there could be a saving at least of $80. I know it sounds much in the grand scheme of things, but that's in for the markets of handling, in terms of billions of dollars. That could be tens of hundreds of millions saved annually. And hopefully, because of the transparency aspect of blockchain, that can be passed on to the customer, and we're not being fobbed off even further, so they're taking more and more profit. But we need blockchain and AI to come in for that. That's where EnergyWeb kicks in. Hopefully, that's a bit of a random roundup of that. There's a lot more to talk about with EnergyWeb, but let's go into the chart, guys, so we can wrap this video up. Let me switch my screens. Here we go. So EWT, let's just zoom out quickly over to this area. We can look at the previous fib levels that I had put in. In fact, I probably need to put a new one in because we had, since the last video, a new low. So I'm just going to put in this new one and we'll compare it with the old one anyway. Oh, that has gone all over the place. There we go. Zoom in there. Oh, there we go. So first of all, let's look at the previous ones, because we are now getting slowly back to those areas. You see the lower drop line here. We've just finally got back to that stage, which is really good, because then we can start looking at these intermediary levels in the next coming videos. But for now, let's see where we are. So we can see we've taken one of the low points, or most recent low points. We've taken one of the most recent high points up here. This gives us the structure of the fib levels. These are areas, in theory, potentially, of target areas to potentially sell or looking into buying, depending on where it's fluctuating to. So at the moment, we've hit that barrier at the 166. As I mentioned just a moment ago, the current price point of EWT, 158, as of recording, of course. Performances are fairly okay on the weekly, monthly, and the 3 months. Very poor on the latter. But that's anticipated with the bear market that we've had. And of course, EWT is a slightly higher price point compared to many other crypto assets. There's that kind of behavioral insight to think about as well. But on that point, really, the price point here, we have to see some stability on this one sort of 1.6 notion or thereabouts. If we can get that for a few more days, I think we could potentially start pushing up towards the $2 again, try and signify that off as well. That really has the variables of all the things that go on in the rest of the market, the altcoin seasons, etc. In addition to that, me personally, I am a long-term holder of EnergyWeb token because I see the future. I see the 2030 goals. I see the 2040 goals in climate, environmental, energy. Yes, of course, if we get back up to the periods of $20 odd, I will happily sell some of it off, of course. But for the longer term, where people are asking about my price predictions, I can't remember if I did this way long ago, but I did mention that I think potentially by 2030 we could get towards that $200 mark. And that is the principle of market trend in previous movements. So as I said, the previous all-time highs were way back up at sort of 23 odd dollars, way off to where we are currently. But if we take in those extra variables outside of the market charts, for example, what we just mentioned about technological advancements, the energy sector in general is, trillions upon trillions of dollars. The platforms and infrastructures and the technologies are needed for us to advance in that area. And EnergyWeb has got something ready to go right now. And so much so, of course, that EWT is relatively involved with the World Economic Forum to an extent. It's mentioned in a lot of their papers. It's working very hard with the likes of the European Commission, of course, over facilitating what's going on there. And of course, worldwide in general, it's going to keep growing. So I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that it could be between that $100, $200 by 2030. Could we see 100 in this next bull run? That is a possibility as well. I think it's a bit far off, possibly. I'm going to be conservative to say that we could at least try and get to the sort of $50 mark or so as a benchmark point. But that's again off the basis that the technology is there, yes. The integration is not there fully yet. And there's still a massive education piece in the business or the commercial side, the industry side of it, before we really start scaling up. Can you imagine by 2030 when this is all taken care of and it's all legalized, regulated, the crypto space, the use of blockchain, etc., the energy peer-to-peer, let's say that's all regulated. People, when they're investing, are going to go, oh, what's powering this? Like they do in the finance sector, like they do with the RTGS system, like they do with AI. What's powering AI? Why do you think NVIDIA and all the AI tokens blew up a year or so ago in the crypto space in particular? Because people just go, oh, AI word. Oh, let's just buy anything that's associated with AI. And hopefully they do some research in that. And I think everyone will do exactly the same with all the other industries and categories that are out there as well. And not to mention, of course, the energy one too. So they're the moments I'm looking out for at the moment. It's the 166-ish mark. Can we facilitate that? If so, we're taking up to potentially the next push-up level. The RSIs on the bottom left here are showing 63 and 58, which is a positive thing in some ways. It means that we've got a bit more movement upwards than we do downwards to still go, especially when we're in this upward trend movement. So let's see. I think we could potentially see that $2 soon. But we need to just have that tiny little pullback. We've had a couple of them over the last few days. We need that stability more than anything for us to do that. So let's see where we get to from that. Then in the next EWT video, I think we might start talking about the previous intermediary fib lines. We can start potentially looking at 250 and that $3 mark again. But we need to hit these middle points first. As I said, we've just hit the lower barrier again. It tried to get up to, it passed two midterm fib levels back up here from those January numbers. But it's reduced itself back down. So let's see how that goes. We'll do another EWT video in the next week or two, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed the content. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.